The blacktop sings a lonely song, you know, a constant, low hum that gets into your bones after 10, 12 hours behind the wheel. For 30 years, that song has been my life. From the docks of Long Beach to the frozen ports of Maine, I've hauled everything from cheap plastic toys to million-dollar machinery. You see things out here on the lonely stretches of highway, things that don't make the evening news. You learn to trust your gut, and you learn which stories whispered over the CB radio are just bored guys blowing smoke, and which ones have the cold ring of truth. This story starts on a long, straight shot of I-70, cutting through the heart of Indiana, the kind of drive that lulls you to sleep if you're not careful. The sun was bleeding all orange and purple across the cornfields, and the chatter on the radio was the usual stuff. Smoky sightings, complaints about fuel prices, some guy named Rubber Duck trying to find a decent cup of coffee in Terre Haute. Then, a new voice cut through the static. Old timer. You could hear the gravel in his voice, the years of road dust in his lungs. He wasn't talking to anyone in particular, more like he was thinking out loud. Coming up on St. Augustine's crossing, he rasped. If any of you boys are running late, don't be tempted. Go the long way round. Trust an old dog on that. A younger voice piped up. What's the problem with St. Augustine's, old man? Road washed out a pause. Then the old-timer's voice came back, lower this time. Worse, the road's fine. It's the tracks that ain't there that got my attention. I'd been a trucker long enough to know that a warning without a clear reason is the one you pay most attention to. He went on to tell the tale. A little two-lane county road that cut a few miles off the main route. It had an old railway crossing. The thing is, the railroad company pulled up the tracks back in the 70s, tore 'em right out of the ground. But they left the crossing, the old rusty cantilever signals, the peeling red and white striped barriers, the whole works. Most of the time, it's just a strange piece of roadside history. But sometimes, he said, the crossing comes alive. The bells start to ring, a sound like a dead man's telephone. The lights flash, painting the trees in a bloody red glow. And the barriers come down, and then, he said, the train comes. You can't see it, not really, but you feel it. A rush of wind that'll rock a fully loaded rig on its springs. You hear it, too. The clatter of wheels on rails that aren't there, and a long, mournful whistle that sounds like it's coming from the bottom of a cold, deep grave. The old-timer said the legend is if you're crossing the spot where the tracks used to be when the train comes through, it takes something from you. It steals your shadow, leaving you incomplete, a little less real than you were before. The younger trucker just laughed it off. You've been drinking your radiator fluid again, Grandpa. But the old-timer's final words before he signed off stuck with me. Laugh all you want, kid, but a shadow is a heavy thing to lose. Makes you feel cold, even in the July sun. I checked my map. He was right. There was the county road, the thin little line promising a 15-minute shortcut. My delivery in Indianapolis was on a tight schedule. It was just a story, right? A ghost story for bored truckers. I flicked my turn signal on. What's the worst that could happen? The county road was narrower than it looked on the map. The asphalt was cracked, and weeds grew in the fissures. The sky had deepened to a bruised purple, and the tall stalks on either side of me seemed to lean in, whispering secrets. I almost missed it. It was set back from the road, half swallowed by overgrown bushes. St. Augustine's crossing. It was exactly as the old-timer described. The signals were rusted, the paint flaked off, the wooden barriers were bleached gray. I slowed the rig to a crawl, looking down at the road, and there it was, or rather, what wasn't there? A wide, gravel-filled gap where the steel rail should have been. It was eerie, a place that had forgotten its own purpose. I was about to shift gears and roll on through when a single, piercing sound cut through the hum of my engine. Clang. My blood went cold. It was a bell, a rusty, toneless, awful sound. Then another, clang. I slammed on the brakes. High on the cantilever signal, A single red light began to flash, then its twin on the other side. They blinked in a perfect, hypnotic rhythm, painting the inside of my cabin a pulsating red light. This was impossible. There were no wires, no power. And then, with a groan of ancient, unwilling metal, the barriers began to lower. They moved slowly, jerkily, like arthritic arms. Down, down, down they came, until they blocked the road in front of me. The bells kept ringing. My trucker instinct screamed at me. Bad wiring. A prank. But then I felt it started in the steering wheel. A low, deep vibration that had nothing to do with my own engine. It grew, shaking the coffee in my cup holder. The whole cab began to tremble. And the wind came. It wasn't a natural wind. It hit my rig like a solid wall. The truck rocked violently. The corn in the fields bent flat. I heard a sound then, over the clanging bells. The high, lonesome cry of a steam whistle. It wasn't a sound in my ears. It was a sound in my skull. It screamed of speed and weight and unstoppable momentum. I was frozen, my hands locked on the wheel, staring at the empty space where the tracks used to be. The air grew impossibly cold. My windows fogged over instantly. The roar intensified, a deafening symphony of clattering steel and hissing steam, reaching a crescendo right in front of my grill. For a split second, I swear I could smell hot metal and coal smoke. The truck bucked one last time, a violent shudder, and then silence. The wind died. The vibration stopped. The bells fell silent. With a final, tired groan, the barriers lifted, inviting me to cross. The red lights blinked twice more, then went dark. I sat there for a full 5 minutes, maybe more, the only sound the ragged edge of my own breathing. My logical mind was screaming explanations, but my gut knew better. I had just been passed by a train that didn't exist. Driving away from that crossing was one of the hardest things I've ever done. I glanced at my side view mirror. The crossing was shrinking in the distance, but for just a second, under the cold light of the rising moon, I thought I saw a figure standing by the rusted signals. Just a tall, dark shape. Then I blinked, and it was gone. I made my delivery in Indianapolis, but my mind wasn't on the job. I felt hollow. There was a chill deep inside me that the truck's heater couldn't touch. The feeling didn't go away. For the next few days, it was like I was watching a movie of my own life. The colors of the world seemed a little less vibrant. The taste of my coffee was flat. It was like someone had turned down the volume on my whole existence. The old-timer's words kept echoing in my head. It steals your shadow. I started noticing strange things. At a truck stop outside of Pittsburgh, I was walking across the brightly lit parking lot at dusk. The setting sun cast long shadows, but when I looked down for my own, it was weak, faint, where it should have been a sharp, dark silhouette. It was a translucent gray, the edges blurry and indistinct. I stopped and stared. The shadow it cast was like smoke. I started to get scared, really scared. I pulled into a rest stop and went into the public bathroom, needing to see my own face. The fluorescent lights hummed. I looked into the mirror, and I saw a stranger. It was my face, my tired eyes, the lines etched by years on the road. But it was faded, like a photograph left out in the sun for too long. My skin looked pale. My eyes lacked their usual spark. I leaned closer. I raised my hand to my face, and for a terrifying split second, my reflection's hand seemed to lag behind my own as if it was moving through water. I stumbled back, my heart pounding. This wasn't just in my head. Something had happened back there. That crossing, that train. It had done something to me. The legend wasn't just a story. It was a receipt for a toll I hadn't realized I'd paid. I knew I couldn't keep running. You can't outrun something that's already inside you. I looked at the map, my hands trembling. My route was supposed to take me east, but my truck was already pointing west. I had to go back. I had to know what was on the other side of those tracks. I had to see if there was any way to get back what I had lost. The drive back to Indiana was a blur of caffeine and creeping dread. I couldn't sleep. To live the rest of my life as a ghost, a faded copy of myself, was a fate worse than death. I arrived at St. Augustine's crossing just after sunset. The place looked different now. It didn't look like a forgotten piece of history. It looked like a trap. I pulled my rig over, killed the engine, and turned off the lights. And then I waited. The silence was absolute. Hours passed. The moon climbed high, casting everything in a silvery, ghostly light. I started to think I was crazy, that I'd imagined the whole thing. It was close to midnight when the air changed. A sudden, deep chill seeped into the cab. A strange electric tension filled the air. Then it began, clang. The sound was louder this time. The red lights started their hellish blinking. The barriers groaned their way down. I didn't feel fear this time, just a cold, grim resignation. I gripped the steering wheel, my eyes fixed on the empty space where the rails used to be. The vibrations started again. The wind tore through the corn, and the whistle screamed through the night. This time, I didn't close my eyes. I stared into the heart of the storm, and I saw them. They weren't ghosts. In the swirling vortex of wind and dust, I saw shapes, shimmering, translucent silhouettes, like heat haze off hot asphalt. There were dozens of them, maybe hundreds. I could make out the forms of people: a woman in an old-fashioned dress, a man in a fedora, a soldier in a uniform. They were all there, caught in the rushing torrent. They were shadows, a whole train full of stolen shadows. My blood ran cold as I realized what I was seeing. This train didn't just take your shadow, it collected them. It was a spectral vessel, forever carrying the lost pieces of everyone who had crossed its path at the wrong time. And then I saw it. Near the back of the procession of shapes, I saw a new one, a broader silhouette, seated with its hands on a large wheel. It was the shadow of a man in the driver's seat of a big rig. It was my shadow. I watched, mesmerized and horrified, as my own faint, smoky outline was swept past me, a passenger on a train to nowhere. I saw it turn its head, and even though it had no features, I felt it look at me. I felt its hollowness, its coldness, its permanent separation. I finally understood. The train doesn't just steal your shadow, it swaps it. It leaves you with a faint echo, while the real, solid part of you is forced to ride its rails for eternity. The roaring peaked, the last of the phantom cars passed, and then, just as before, it was over. The silence crashed back in. The barriers lifted. I was still there, sitting in my truck. But I knew with a certainty that chilled me to my soul that the most important part of me was gone, heading down a track that no longer existed. I don't know how long I sat there after it passed. The sun was coming up when I finally found the strength to turn the key. The engine turned over, the familiar diesel rumble a hollow comfort. I put the truck in gear and drove away from St. Augustine's crossing for the last time. I didn't look in the mirror. That was 6 months ago. I'm still on the road. It's the only thing I know. But I'm not the same man. The world is a photograph with the color bleached out. Food is just fuel. Music is just noise. I drive, I unload, I get my papers signed, and I drive again. I'm a machine, going through the motions. The chill never leaves me. Even in the blistering heat of the Arizona desert, I feel a coldness deep in my bones, a permanent draft in my soul. I've taken to wearing a heavy jacket, even in the summer. Other drivers give me strange looks. They call me Ghost Rider on the CB, not as a joke, but because they say there's something not quite right about me. They say I don't seem all there. They're more right than they know. I avoid bright lights. I hate seeing my reflection in the storefront windows when I stop for coffee. The man looking back at me is a pale imitation, a watery, transparent thing that seems to be fading more with each passing week. And my shadow, well, on a bright sunny day, on fresh blacktop, you can barely see it. A faint, gray smudge that follows me around, a constant reminder of what I lost. A reminder that my true self is out there somewhere riding a cold, dark railroad, forever trapped in the moment I decided a shortcut was worth the risk. So, I'm telling you this now. You sitting there, listening to my story. If you're ever out on the road, late at night, and you see a shortcut that looks too good to be true, you think about me. You think about the humming on the wires and the stories old truckers tell, because some roads you're not meant to travel, some crossings you're not meant to cross, and some things, once they're taken from you, you can never, ever get back. Take it from me, the man who casts no shade. Just keep on the main road. Always.